What's up, everybody? And we're back with another awesome episode to kick off the new year. I'm still sitting here in Norman, Oklahoma at Titan Martial Arts with brown belt instructor Kody Roach. Kody is a Marine Corp veteran, so thank you, sir, for your service. And he is also a yoga teacher and just all around awesome American. And Kody, thank you so much, buddy, for sitting down and taking time with me. What's up?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I don't know if I'm qualified to be on your radio.
Yo,
but
you're very qualified.
I do appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So are you a big podcast guy?
I listen to podcasts. Yes, absolutely. There's a few that I end up filtering through. You know, Jocko's podcast that's pretty interesting. He gets some. Jocko takes it to a different level, though.
I'm a fan of Jocko's podcast. A lot of the guys back in Chicago with me are big fans as well. So, you know, we'll have the rash guards out there sometimes, and some of the guys are doing the Jocko Molk.
Yeah.
You know, they're buying into it all.
Yeah, I like the guests that he picks. You know, I like Joe Rogan as well. He's got it's such a breadth of people that he puts on the podcast, so you get such different perspectives and expertise and ideas. So that's one that I frequently filter in.
Dude, that's awesome. I'm so deep into different podcasts, and Jocko's one of the only people I know that can read to me, and I'm okay with it. Because it's kind of, if you think about it, when you're not like listening to a book on tape, it's kind of weird when somebody reads to you. Tim Ferriss can do it, and I accept it. But I want to jump back, and I want to talk about, how did you get interested in martial arts and Jiu Jitsu in particular? Did you start with Jiu Jitsu, or did you start with another form of martial arts?
Yeah, see, I consider wrestling a martial art in a way. It's, you know, you have coaches, and it's less formal than what you would see at like a taekwondo school or a karate school. It's more sport based and competitive based, but you're learning so much in a wrestling room that can be applied right over to traditional martial art like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or karate.
Did you start at a young age in school, or did, like, you know, before, you know, junior high, or carry it out through high school? When did you start wrestling?
I started wrestling in junior high in 8th grade. So I was 12. In competitive high school wrestling, that's pretty late, because normally your high level wrestlers are starting at 4 and 5, and these guys are, by the time they get 12 and 13, they're monsters already.
Yeah, they're already on the way to their black belt in wrestling by then, and you're just kicking it off. But that's still, you know, if you think about it, like, a lot of people don't even start, you know, a form of martial arts until their late teens or in their 20s. So starting at junior high is still a good run.
I think so. And I was always involved in sports as well. So basketball was in my, you know, that would be my first love of sports, would be basketball. It was, and it's one of those sports that you can do alone. You know, you can go out and just work on your jump shot or your layup. And it's different when you have wrestling or, you know, sports that you need cooperation from another person. So, and I had an older brother, and, you know, you could say that he was teaching me from an early age to be tough as well.
Yeah, just the competitive side of brothers. Like, that was my thing. Is I was always mad because my brother was never competitive enough for me. And he would just kind of, you know, be like, all right, and, you know, quit early. And I'm like, no, let's keep going. And then I would have to be that kid who ran up the score on my brother all the time.
Yep, a very similar relationship. And it was, after a while, it got to a point to where it was good having my older brother who was not interested in playing with me at that time, because I started to learn how to entertain myself, and also I was learning how to get better at things by myself.
So did you wrestle all throughout high school?
Yeah.
From that, did you fight? Were you pretty successful? Because, you know, you hear a lot of stories where when people start wrestling in high school, they're either really bad, then they get good by their senior year. Were you pretty good at it from the start and just fell in love with it? How'd that go?
Yeah, I was little. In 8th grade, I wrestled at 86 pounds. So I was a very small kid, and I was good because I was athletic, and the guys I was competing against. Now, the ones that started at a young age, they would maul me. I had no chance, absolutely no chance with them. But I did. I worked really hard. and I was aggressive. I would go forward.
What did you wrestle at when you got into high school?
103.
That's the lowest, isn't it?
That is.
Okay.
Yeah. My sophomore year, 103. My junior year, 103. And senior year, 119. And so, yeah, I did actually, I got better quickly. And we had a good wrestling program.
Where did you go to school?
Altus, Oklahoma.
Okay. So I know a lot about Altus down there. And you're down there near Lawton, which is a pretty big, heavy wrestling factory.
Yeah, we were. And it was a school it's not a large school, or it's not a large town, rather, but there's a lot of kids, and there's a lot of kids in the surrounding towns. And so we would get, I think I graduated with a couple hundred people. So we had a rather large sample of kids to get into the wrestling room.
See, that's awesome, because when I started at Blanchard, I think there was like 135 of us. Then I moved just down here to Washington, just a little south of where we are right now, and I was one of 55 kids. So to me, both of them were pretty small. So Altus, that's funny when you say it's pretty small. I'm like, no, it's a lot bigger school than where I went.
Yeah, it was, and I didn't notice it as being like a small town really whenever I was there. But now venturing out, I do realize that it was rather small. But back to the wrestling, it was, my junior year I was a captain. I was the smallest kid. My senior year I was a captain. I was the smallest kid. And I didn't have a great record until I got to my senior year. And I think a lot of this was a bit of a late developer physically. So it took me some time to grow into my body. And my senior year, I went to 119 pounds. So I think that was a factor. I wasn't pulling any weight. So it took some time to, just like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, to accumulate the skills. Learning to move another person against their will, it's a tough thing to do.
Were those practices pretty tough for you? Because I imagine, all the guys in there are a lot bigger than you, and you had to go with all your teammates quite often. Did you learn to use more technique during that time? And did you pick up on that, or were you still trying to like power people, like kind of like a bigger guy would?
Practice was grueling. It's the hardest thing I've done. And since wrestling practice and the consistency of it was so tough, because it's day in, day out. You go in there, and these are long practices.
Oh, I never competed with the teams, but I would go in between football and baseball off season, and then they need like a bigger body in there. And I just remember sweating buckets, and we'd just be running around the mats, warm-ups, takedowns. Next thing you know, like we're learning some stuff, we're drilling, and then you think it's over, and we'd be running outside and running, a couple of miles down the road, and the guy's in his pickup truck just following you.
Yeah, and adding on to this is the open tournaments every weekend, or the duels, or the quads, all the competition that's involved in it. And yeah, so it was grueling practices. I think I was more of a technician, and it's similar to my jiu-jitsu these days. But I would still bulldoze my way until I got to a place that I knew how to be technical. I was like a takedown guy, but I wasn't very good on bottom, and I wasn't a good rider. So I could get them to the ground, and then they would eventually get away.
Oh, even the guys are the same size as you. Were you somebody who had to cut a lot of weight, or did you not? Or I guess how do you say that? Like, when you have to cut a lot of weight, you usually kind of gain it back after you weigh in a little bit as you're rehydrating and stuff. So it's kind of easier to ride people because you're a little heavier than when you weighed in that day. I know you have to weigh in again a lot of times in the same tournament. Or did you just kind of be able to coast in because you didn't have to cut too much?
While I was doing it, I thought it was a lot of weight until I've learned what collegiate wrestlers cut and what UFC fighters cut. But the amount of water weight that you're carrying around at 115 pounds or 110 pounds, getting down to 103, it was very draining. And so my sophomore year, no, I didn't really cut any weight. I wasn't even 100 pounds yet. I was trying to gain weight to get to that. Junior year, I was cutting weight, and that year was very trying, and it was a challenge just to continue to show up.
Yeah, so everybody you're going against when you're trying to gain weight to make it to the weight, they all showed up bigger than you because they were probably cutting down to it, huh?
Yeah, and I did notice that any size advantage when my junior year. I don't think that, those few pounds that I was cutting was significant enough to make a difference riding somebody.
Yeah. Do you, since then, did you move on from wrestling to like a striking form, or did you go straight into jiu-jitsu as you got done with wrestling?
I went from wrestling right into the Marine Corps. So it's different. We learn how to strike. There's the Marine Corps martial arts program as well, which I participated in. But this is a different style of fighting, and it's a different mindset too. It's more along the lines of, there's 3 guys in front of you. Try to take one out so that your buddy behind you only has 2 to deal with. So it wasn't like, what is a technical progression? This type of mindset. It wasn't that at all. It was, I need to injure this person so much so that they're laying on the ground.
Yeah, and my buddies have the lower numbers to take care of. Do you think wrestling, like that mindset and that grueling, helped you with all of that, or like how do you mentally prepare for that kind of stuff when you get into the Marine Corps? That's got to be tough.
Yeah, it definitely physically prepared me. Physically, the Marine Corps was not that difficult to me.
Did you show up in pretty good shape for boot camp and all of that?
Excellent shape. I did 36 pull-ups, dead hang pull-ups, and the max is 20. So, I'm also I'm 145 pounds, so I'm smaller still. But I grew up in I went there in very good physical shape. Now, the mental side of it, it's challenging in wrestling because it's a grind every day, and you have to continue to go. And it was an amazing feeling whenever it was over. I was so relieved. I was so happy. And then going into boot camp, I didn't know. So it's different. So when you're home, there are people that care about you, and that they care about you. You have that now still in just your normal world. But when you go to an organization like the Marines, who are trying to design people to kill, the way in which they do that, they don't show love at all. So you're in an environment it's a hostile environment. So you're cautious all the time. You don't have anybody to really lean on. So in that sense, I was ill prepared for boot camp.
So it's kind of just a huge culture shock, like right off the bat, from being a teenager going into the real world, as we call it, and just it's like, man, this is not like home, and these people are some savage people. Do you think you still have a lot of that in you, or do you think that you are kind of who you were before you went in, and then who you become a little bit as an adult? Do you think it changed you much, or?
Yeah, there's definitely residual effects of it, for sure. I've been out for almost 8 or 9 years, and I can still recognize another Marine. I know what they look like, how they carry themselves, how they look at you. So there's definitely residual effects of it. It was a great experience to have. It was a great experience.
Were you in for 4 years?
5.
5 years?
Yeah. And, boot camp it's so intense. The Marines is intense. It's just an intense thing. But it's shocking going to boot camp because you're coming from the civilian world. So the intensity, the difference in the levels is noticeable, and you feel it. You feel it on your shoulders, and you're like, what did I get myself into? What am I doing? Where am I at? Why did I do this? And how do I get out of here? And it's difficult to get out once you make it there. And also it's a type of person that goes there, that they're not the type of person that, generally speaking, that is going to be willing to quit or say, I don't really want to do this anymore.
Yeah. It's one of the two. You're either in love with it or you're not.
Yeah. And so So you have this environment that's kind of hostile, and then I'm 18. I'm little. I wore glasses, and now you have a buzzed head. And so I remember, so the very beginning of it, you're just going through doing all of your like medical stuff, and they go check your eyes. And I wore glasses since I was in second grade. And so I'm getting my eyes checked, and then they give me the glasses. I have my contacts with me still. So they give me the glasses, and that night I was in the barracks. I went to the bathroom, and I put them on, and I looked at myself. I said, no way. No way. Nobody's going to take me serious. I'm already the smallest dude, and I look like a kid, and now I have these glasses that are consuming my entire face. No way is anybody going to take me serious. So from that point, I put the glasses in my pocket, and I wore my contacts the entire time. So I was in boot camp for 5 months. So for 5 months, I wore
the same pair of contacts.
3 months, the same pair, and then I had some more mailed to me. So yeah, it was an intense experience, and whenever I enlisted, there was a couple guys from my school, and we all enlisted together. And there was this one in particular, Matt Howard, and he was a good friend, and we were both at boot camp in the same time, but we weren't in the same platoon. So I didn't see him at all. I had no idea where he was. And then 2 months into it, we're going to the chow hall, and this is early. This is like 5:36 in the morning, so it's still dark out. So the platoon is going up to the chow hall. We're in Camp Pendleton. So we're posted by the chow hall, and we're getting prepared to attack the chow hall. And so once a platoon is dismissed, we all single file line and go to the chow hall. And now there's another platoon right next to me. And I'm a squad leader at the time, so I'm at the front of the platoon, and I hear, Kody. And this was the most surreal feeling I've experienced, because you forget about your previous life, because your individuality is taken away right when you get there. Your hair is cut. All your possessions are taken away except for a few. And you're given this uniform, and now you talk about yourself in third person. Recruit Roach. That's who I was. And I hear somebody saying Kody. And you're not like able to freely speak. So whoever's saying this is going out on a limb. They're taking a risk by talking to me. And I look over, and it's Matt. And I see him, and I still remember the feeling. We made eyes. We just kind of nodded, and then we went on. And I didn't see him again until we were stationed together in Japan years later.
Did he look a lot different than when because you were talking about getting the haircut and everything and not wearing the glasses at the time, but was he wearing glasses? Did he get anything different? You're just like, whoa.
No, he looked the same. And it was cool because I was able to see somebody that I knew me before what I was in. And then I also knew that he had a bit of love for me. So that was a unique experience.
Yeah. And just nothing probably ever experienced quite like that since, have you?
Not really.
Was getting out kind of that same feeling when you're like, okay, man, this is now the next step of whatever's the rest of my life, and that kind of that home feeling, like when you saw your buddy, was it somewhat similar, or was it a little different?
Getting out was a relief again, but it was in a way scarier than going in, because what happens, you assimilate into this culture that you're doing well in, that financially you're fine, you've got a barracks to sleep in, you have a chow hall to eat in, you don't really have to make many decisions because you're still, I was a sergeant at that time, so an E5, so I was mid-level, but I was still being told what to do for the most part. And now you're going back into the civilian world. But you're going back into the civilian world without much security. There's a lot of questions that are unknown. And then this whole idea of assimilating back into society and being functional and meeting the expectations that maybe you've placed on yourself or society has placed on you is a very scary feeling.
Did it take you a while to adapt once you got out to what you would, air quotes, call normal day life now?
Yeah. I still feel like I'm adapting. It's
8-9 years later.
That's right.
Yeah, I can imagine that's got to be tough. And, I don't know if mentally I would be tough enough to go through it. So, man, thank you for your service and be, willing, putting yourself in that position so others don't have to.
Yeah, thank you. You would be, though. You would be, because...
Is it that adapt or die kind of thing?
Yeah, you just have to. You have to, like I said, it's not easy getting out once you're in. And then the consequences of getting out early, prematurely, now you're looking at a different type of discharge. And you're not going to get any of the benefits that an honorably discharged veteran would get, So outside of like a medical discharge.
What do you think jiu-jitsu and yoga has helped you since getting out, find yourself and remain calm and it help meditate, whether it's yoga or, even jiu-jitsu is so meditative, when you're on the mats, because that's all you're thinking about is in the moment of hey, what do I got to do here not to get, submitted or, just to, survive kind of thing. How does that helped you since being out? And did you start doing that like yoga or jiu-jitsu while you were in the Marine Corps, or did all that pick up when you got out?
I was doing the Marine Corps martial arts program, so I was progressing through those ranks. So I was a green belt, and that would be the belts if they have not changed at this point. So tan, gray, green, brown, and black. Again, you have different degrees of black. So I was familiar with jiu-jitsu from a combative standpoint. We knew guard. I knew arm bars and triangle chokes. A green belt is not very high in McMat program, but it's enough to get a basic understanding of movements and some techniques.
Do you feel your wrestling that you had helped get you there, when you got in?
I already knew how to move people, so I progressed through those belts really quick, and it was easy. The difference is that you're working with rifles, so you're butt stroking, you're learning thrusts, assuming that you have a bayonet at the end of your rifle. You're, knife fighting to a small degree. So, but yeah, the wrestling was huge in that. And it was, big guys too. If they had no wrestling base, I move them around easy.
I bet that felt pretty good too, when something like that nobody else does, and in a place where all people are supposed to be the manliest men they can be.
Yeah. And so what happened with getting out is I was needing, so you leave that, I leave the Marine Corps, and then I'm in the civilian world, and I'm just I go back home for a week or two, and then I move to where I am now in Norman. And a lot of the good feelings of the Marine Corps comes from the camaraderie, of having buddies around all the time. And so that was part of the attraction of jiu-jitsu. It's and it changes. It's my interest, my reasons for doing jiu-jitsu change over the years, has changed. But I needed some competition. I needed some type of outlet. And I wanted some type of camaraderie.
So did you start jiu-jitsu within the first year after getting out, or was it a little later?
I think 3 years. I got out at 23. I started jiu-jitsu at 26, 25 or 26.
Where'd you first go when you first started? Is it here at Titan,
Mm-hmm.
or did you go? Okay.
Yeah. I started here. I've been here since.
And now you're an instructor here, so that's got to feel pretty good, because I've learned and I've probably been to 4 or 5 of your classes in the past year, coming into town and stuff. And every time I come in, you show me some good stuff. So
yeah, thank you. It's a good feeling. I'm learning more now that I'm teaching, and not so much teaching the adults. I'm learning more teaching the kids class, because this is to articulate the things in a way that kids can interpret it, understand it, and then execute it. It's so difficult because you have to because we've got age ranges from 5 to 16 in the kids class. So it's a huge range of capacity to absorb. So you have to think about what are the words that you're using to explain it to a kid, because I don't have to even think about that with you, because it's your vocabulary is large, so and you can understand it even if you don't know the definition. You can, in context, you can figure out what I mean.
You get the gist of it, yeah.
But the kids, you don't. But they pay attention. Some of them do.
I'd say when they're really paying attention, they pay attention a lot better than the adults, because we kind of, I don't know. Sometimes I question us adults, like, what are we doing here? Like, come on, guys, let's all stay focused. Maybe one person's focused, their drilling partner's not. But like when you get the kids in the zone, they really get in the zone, it seems like.
Yeah, it is the coolest thing for me to see whenever kids can expand that ability to focus and get in the zone and pay attention. That's what I think fundamentally, that's what we're doing in here. I think as adults, but it's easier to see with the kids because adults can pay attention for, at least 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Most kids, they don't have the ability to sit still, pay attention, and then go drill the moves, because they're just, I don't know, they're free. They're lighthearted.
Yeah. And I mean, which most kids, they should be. And, now they're trying to give them all this like ADHD medicine and this Ritalin and everything. And reality jiu-jitsu and things like this is so good for them, because all they need to do is just move their bodies. I feel like kids don't get to move enough. And when they get to drilling and stuff, like they really drill because they just want to move their bodies, and they feel good when they get that positive feedback. Like, oh, I'm doing this correctly. Coach is giving me, some props here, that kind of thing. And to watch that as a kid, I mean, if you think about it, like that's all us grown, children are as adults, is like we feel good when the coach sees something and we're like, oh man, like coach saw me, do that proper technique, and like that feels good. Or if not, you get the extra tech, like you come in and you help people and be like, okay, yeah, let me, tighten this up, let me fix this. And if you're really paying attention, and I think kids do, they pick up on it quicker than adults, because sometimes when adults don't get the proper technique, I just feel like it's because they're not paying attention.
Yeah, and I think you're dealing with ego more in adults. Nah, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, this guy, he actually knows what he's talking about and pay attention. I don't think that conversation goes on in most kids' heads, because they essentially just need somebody to be there and to play the part. And then hopefully they have somebody that is playing the part, a person who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. So I want to jump into the yoga. So you teach yoga as well, but how long have you been doing yoga, and what got you interested in yoga? Because I've started yoga, I guess it'd be a little over 3 months ago now. And I think it's really changed my game, and it's really helped my back, because I've always had, back problems and things like that. But I think it's really changed my game, and it's made me even like more patient, and like when I'm in bad situations, I can think more freely. And I think a lot of that's because of yoga, because, when you're holding a stretch and you're like, oh man, this is burning, or my legs are shaking, or something's shaking, and you kind of just keep holding it a little longer. I kind of find that that's translated for me in jiu-jitsu. Yeah,
I've been doing yoga for 3 years, I think. I've been teaching yoga for a year. And it was jiu-jitsu that got me into yoga. And it was because I had learned from Paul, who's a black belt instructor here, that the quickest way to improve your jiu-jitsu is improve your flexibility and range of motion. He said that early on, and that just kind of stuck with me. And so I'd always been playing around with stretching, and I really liked Eddie Bravo's rubber guard, so that was a style of jiu-jitsu that I was implementing day one. And it was also conducive to my body type, because I could get my legs in those positions, and I was already pretty scrappy. So I had known that if I would work on my flexibility, that I would be able to hit more submissions and moves than other people. And then I started to notice I was walking around very tight because I was training so much. And I had got a membership at the YMCA. And I got that membership because they had a sauna. That was my prime reason for going there, is I wanted to sit in the sauna. I wanted to get the benefits of being in the heat, and I thought it would loosen my body up. And then from there, I'd started to enjoy the group classes like the Pilates class or the Tai Chi class that they have. And then I started taking yoga classes. And I started with a lady named Natalie, and it was called Coffee Cup Yoga. And it was like shots of espresso in that class were like HIIT training. And I was like, wow, this is intense yoga.
This sounds like my kind of yoga. I am a coffee connoisseur. You give me a shot of espresso and tell me to stretch, I'm all in.
So metaphorically, shots of espresso.
Oh, it wasn't real ones?
No.
Oh, man. Because, they do weird yoga. Like, I don't know about here, but up in Chicago, like, there's weird themed yoga. And I was like, man, they do that here too? So I was all in. But it was metaphorically, I get it.
Yeah. But it did. You finished the class and you felt great. And so I kept going to that class, and I was starting to implement other yoga styles. And I eventually progressed to teaching the classes. And teaching it is, truly what I'm doing is teaching a class that I want to be in. It's the style of yoga that I like. It's a fitness-based, intense yoga class where you're going to sweat. Your heart rate is going to increase, and it's restorative and it's relaxing. I like to explain it as a bell curve. It starts off very slow, and then we gradually warm the body up, and then we peak, and then we pull it back down, and then we fade off into Shavasana and relax. So it's been helpful for me to maintain my ability to keep doing jiu-jitsu. That's what it's doing for me now, and I'm going to continue to do it. And it's led me into like learning about fitness and stretching, and it's led me to learn about nutrition and what are the foods that you need to put into your body so that you can continue to fuel and continue to do the things that you want to do.
So do you eat pretty clean and really watch your diet and what you're consuming, like whether it's a beverage or food wise? Or do you kind of do like a cheat meal? Like what's your diet like, I guess, is more the question.
I'm not too restrictive on what I consume right now. I like my goal is, whenever I'm eating, is to get the nutrient dense foods in and then go ahead and enjoy whatever food you want, but not substituting standard Western food for like leafy greens or the beans that you need, or like all these micronutrients and nutrients that you need to get in that you're missing out on if you just consume a fast food meal and then clog up the space in your belly.
Yeah. Are you very cognizant of what you eat? Like if you're going to go do jiu-jitsu or go do yoga? Because I find myself, especially in the past 6 months, I try to like time like a couple hours to an hour before jiu-jitsu what I eat and how much I eat, just so that I am not feeling lethargic during, drills and rolls and things like that. Because sometimes like because I do a lot of fasting, intermittent fasting every day, I try to do 14 to 16 hours. And sometimes, once a week I'll try to do a 24-hour fast. But if I try to do like a 14, 16 hour and come off that and hit like a noon Saturday class, I have like no energy after the first round of rolls or something like that. I feel dead. So are you pretty aware of what you put in your body before you do yoga or do jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, and I'm experimenting with that still. I don't have it down to a science, because some days I come in here and I feel great, and I just went and had, food that you would consider not to be very good for you. So, and then sometimes I've been eating very clean, and I come in here and I feel burned out and heavy.
So I've kind of noticed that too, like, and I'm still experimenting as well, because sometimes like I'll eat like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich like at the back end of work when I'm an hour and a half before jiu-jitsu, and I can feel great. And like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is not that great for you, but I can also like one day bring, chicken and sweet potatoes and I can feel okay. And then the next day I can just bring steak and greens and feel lethargic. But outside of that, if I eat steak and greens, like I feel amazing.
Yeah.
And so I can't really, I don't know if it's a carb thing. I'm still working on it myself, but I was kind of wondering, I was like, man, you got two like art forms here. I wonder if there's like something you eat before this one or something you would eat before this one, because I'm still trying to perfect that as well. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, I know to fuel the body. I think it's more important to eat enough before so you can fuel that workout. I think that's important. But I'm not quite sure the foods that make me feel really good, because it's complicated, because it's like, how much sleep did I get that night? What was a week of training like? I mean, this, like how much have I stretched? Is there some work stress that's starting to bog me down? So it's not really clear to me it's clear that there are some foods that are more nutrient dense than others, but it's not clear to me how the body's burning those foods.
Do you work out every day, or do you take an off day or two every week? What's your weekly workout schedule like? Is it all day, every day, or is it, 5 days a week, 2 days off? What do you do?
Yeah, I'm doing something every day, at least. Generally it's twice a day. So I'll do yoga in the morning around 9:30, do an hour-long yoga class, or I'll go lift some weights, and then I go sit in the sauna. And the sauna, I sit in there for a very long time. And so I'll do 30 minutes. I'll go sit outside and cool off, come back in for another 10 or 20 minutes. Then I'll kind of spend the rest of the day just kind of going about my business, kind of doing my thing, eating, relaxing. And then fortunately I have some people that I do privates with. So that starts at 4. So 4 to 5 I do a private. 5:15 to 6 we do the kids class. 6 to 7 we do the adult class. So it's...
Do you stretch after that, like when you go home, or ice or sauna or anything?
I like hot baths. I like that, especially if I've grappled and I've been doing a lot of gripping and then my forearms are tightened up. So I really like hot baths, Epsom salt baths. I do a ton of stretching. I'm always stretching, it seems like. Sometimes I feel like I'm stretching too much. And maybe that's a thing, overstretching.
Yeah. Do you find it like more difficult to teach a yoga class or more difficult to teach a jiu-jitsu class? Like on the whole, like is there one that you think is a little more challenging for you as a person than the other, or you just feel like you hit your groove with both of them by now?
There's far more talking and articulating the moves in yoga, because I'm leading the class through a sequence of moves and they're trying to follow along. So it's like, inhale your right leg high, exhale, pull to your right hand, prep for warrior 2. So the whole time I'm talking. So I think yoga is more difficult in that sense. Now, teaching moves in jiu-jitsu and articulating that to somebody is more of a challenge to me, because it's, I find, it's easy to show those moves. I can show it, but you need to be able to walk somebody through it.
Yeah, because, when you fix their mistakes, I would call it, because like once you start drilling in your head and then you're like, I see it, and somebody will ask me like, hey, what am I doing wrong here? And then you start thinking about how you do it, and you're like, okay, well, is the way I'm doing it exactly perfect? And but then you see somebody else, you're like, okay, well, that's not right. And then you have to like start dissecting it. Do you think that form of teaching also helps improve your game?
Yes.
Because I think that's a big one I've noticed. I'm like, man, the more I can help somebody else through something, the more I feel like it improves, my game. Because like when I get into a role, and you don't hit things perfectly, but if you remember walking somebody through, like I remember helping somebody with the same mistake, I just kind of did it in a live role. Now you kind of can figure out how to correct it from there. Do you find similarities in that?
Yeah, sometimes almost like you're speaking to yourself. If I'm trying to demonstrate a move to you, and then later that night we're sparring and I'm in that position, I hear myself walking you through that move, and then I can navigate this position now. I know I've just drilled this.
Do you talk to yourself in third person while you're rolling and coaching yourself like that?
Yeah. I notice it mostly whenever I'm in a really bad position. You know that, and I've been in this position in other areas of life too. But whenever you have that, like, okay, stay calm, keep breathing, relax, cover your neck. These times, and it's like, oh, okay, oh shit, here I am talking to myself again. So I'm obviously in a bad position.
I was going to say that, like, now I do that, all the time in roles, but I find myself, in worldly things, like outside of something's not, going the way I think it should go. I'll find myself doing that coaching in my head to myself of like, stay calm. All right. Apparently the linear way you're looking at this right now, whether it's financials or something, you're like, that's not right. Let's take a different avenue here. And let's, see what's over there. And I find myself giving myself that coaching thing that I would in roles of like, all right, protect yourself. Okay, he's doing this, go to your back, or, get to your stomach, or, protect your neck, one of those things, watch your arms. Okay, like, try to shrimp, get out, all that. And I find myself now coaching myself on the mats, but out in life too.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your experience with yoga and how it's in?
So I've been doing it for 3 months now. And my whole point of starting it was because my back was just killing me because I had back surgery a year ago from July, and I've been wanting to get on the mats more and more and more. And like you're saying, like your body just starts wearing out. Well, then I was like, man, what do I have to lose here? So, you hear the Joe Rogans, and I have some friends that I have two of them that teach yoga, and they were like, yeah, just give it a try. You have nothing to lose. So I started giving it a full go. And then I found myself, like at first, like when you're sitting there holding a stretch and it's difficult, you give up on it really easily. And then it's just one of those things you just got to keep sticking with, and then just keep talking yourself, like coaching yourself through it of getting better. Next thing I know, the back pain's going away. Like I'm even sleeping a little bit better, and I'm moving better when I, get out of bed and things like that. And the first thing I do now is I stretch and I do some yoga poses just to kind of get my day going. It gets the blood flow going. So I noticed that, well, when the blood flow is going, I can think better too. Mm-hmm. So like when it comes to like those kinds of benefits from yoga, starting it was just purely because I wanted my back to stop hurting. So
I've recently had 2 sensations in different parts of my spine. And so this is a thing that I'm starting to implement, is keeping the spine aligned while you grapple, which means a lot of the moves that little guys use that I'm trying to steer away from, which is hard because you get so it's intoxicating when you start grappling with somebody, and then it's like now you're having a game, it's going back and forth, and you're like, no, I want to actually hit this position, but I think flexing that spine and either way too far, I don't think it's good. And I think the stacking on the shoulders, there's a lot of guys who that is their style, is to work from that position.
Yeah, let people stack them. Yeah.
I don't think that this is conducive to aging and continuing to do jiu-jitsu.
I don't either, but I'm also trying to take the approach of like, you hear about like the drunk driver who's in a car wreck, that they're always relaxed. And so when they wreck the car, that they're usually not hurt, compared to somebody who, if they're, fully aware and they're all tense and they're the ones, getting all these injuries, even if the wreck is not as bad. Yeah. I try to take that and translate that sense to my jiu-jitsu too, of like when I'm doing those things of like, don't fully like, stress your body where you're just kind of like, trying to stay really tight and things like that. I try to relax as well. And I found, a lot of value in that as well, of working through injuries and being able to come back the next day and not having that, that fatigue and that muscle soreness and those aches and pains in your joints because you're just, so tense. And I feel like yoga has also helped me with that, because when, like I was saying, when you're trying to stretch and you find that you can't even hold it, and then all of a sudden you just kind of get in your mind, you're like, no, just stay here, back off a little bit maybe, and just keep holding this position. That's the same thing as that car wreck to me in jiu-jitsu. It's like, just relax. Like this is, it's just a position. You're going to be here for a little bit, gain some flexibility, just stay calm. And it's more mental, I would say, than it is physical, and which in return helps your physical.
Yeah. It is the relaxing while grappling. It seems counterintuitive, but that's what you notice whenever you have just started and you can't finish a 5-minute roll. And then early, a year, 2 years into it, you can grapple for an hour.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, once you relax in that, you'll find that you're doing pretty much every round, and you do the whole 40 minutes, hour, and sometimes open mats like hour and a half, and you're like, man, I feel really great because I wasn't tensing up this whole time. And it also allows you to think, because when you tense, I feel like your brain also kind of shuts off, like there's not enough blood flow there or something. There's something to it, I believe. I just don't know what it is, but I feel like there's got to be something to it. But I want to jump into a segment, because everybody that has been training jiu-jitsu for at least a couple of years is officially in the jiu-jitsu cult, and they become jiu-jitsu nerds. So I take it you watch jiu-jitsu.
I do.
So do you watch like the EBIs, the quintets, the IBJJF, stuff and all that? Who is your favorite jiu-jitsu practitioner that you don't know, or at least is not in your gym, and why?
I really like Ryan Hall. I like his style. I think he comes from a martial artist perspective. He's not a fighter, doesn't look like a fighter. But he does fight in the UFC. But when you look at him, you're thinking, if you didn't know to look for a few things, ears, forehead, you would look at him and go, this is a guy is not dangerous. He's a smaller guy, but when he grapples, it's flowing. He doesn't seem to be forcing things. He's relaxed, and he tapped out BJ Penn this weekend.
I was about to say, did you see that heel hook?
Yes.
That was so nasty. And, and BJ is a great practitioner in his own right. So to see him do that in a sport where you can punch somebody is amazing.
Yes.
Were you jumping out of your seat for it?
No, but I was very excited for it. I was excited for him. I was sad for BJ Penn because I like BJ Penn as well. But I think it makes more sense that Ryan Hall won, because he's got more of a future in the sport. And he's a good representation for jiu-jitsu, because he has a humble approach.
Yeah. Are you big into like buying people's DVDs or streaming their stuff now with the modern technology and learning that way? How do you learn new techniques to or something you want to show maybe or teach in a class? Do you do that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, I'm subscribed to Solo's and Shandi's website. So I view their videos all the time, and I use YouTube all the time.
YouTube's become such a great resource for so many things, and if you're smart enough to sift out some of the BS moves and all that, like, you can learn some great stuff.
I think even watching the BS moves is helpful, because just the fact that you're sitting down, looking at two people grappling, it's engaging the mind, and you're looking and you're trying to figure out that position and whatever. It doesn't matter that it's donkey guard, and I don't know if that has much utility, that style of guard. But what matters is that you set some time aside to study jiu-jitsu.
And I'm a big proponent in that. Like, I like to sit down and I like to watch a handful of guys that I feel like my game translates more to. And that's kind of what led to this new segment that I'm in love with when I ask people that, because it's always interesting to me to listen to people say, okay, I like this person, and then you hear why they like it. And a lot of times it's people around their same size, and I'm like, okay, so I'm not so crazy, because we always look for people that translate to the things we do, and it's fascinating to me who, like, everybody is differently drawn to, because like I have some friends that are big into striking, and I like to ask them questions like, who's your favorite striker and why? And a lot of them, they don't pick like the really flashy people. They'll pick the people that they more translate to as their game as a whole. And I'm like, okay, this is definitely human nature, and I think that it dates back to like having, good instructors and people just kind of mimicking their instructors all the way through. And now that with, the internet and television, you can expand that and really dissect that. And I think that it is good to sit there and look at a lot of jiu-jitsu videos, wrestling videos, whatever it is that you want to improve at. And then just, it's so cool to me how the brain works. You can just look at something and dissect it in a way, or, even if you go out there and your technique's not right, and you're like, man, why is this not working? You have to keep going back to it. And every time you pick up like little nuances of like, oh, okay, let me try that. Then you start hitting it and you start putting it together like a puzzle. It's just, it's kind of a good feeling, I guess. It's kind of like when you're doing a big project in school or something, and you keep working on it, and when you're getting close to finally finishing it, getting it right, you're like, man, I put all that into it, and now I'm hitting this, and it just, I don't know, it's like a euphoria of happiness.
Yeah. Marcelo too. Marcelo's a good website. So who are you listening to and who are you watching?
So I do the 10th Planet stuff, which, anybody can do because Eddie offers it for $5 a month or $4.99. So I do that. But like my biggest one is Gordon Ryan. All my friends bash me for it, but we're about the same body size. And I mean, he is the king of jiu-jitsu.
He's amazing.
And he does all the basics right. And for such a young kid, I think that's important because the future generations coming up that are watching somebody like Gordon, you got to learn to do the basics right. So like the guys like Hodger Gracie, Marcelo, like those are the people everybody needs to be watching because they do the basics and then they do flashy stuff at the end. So if you learn the basics, then you can get better at the flashy stuff. I just want to be, really good at the basics because you can shut people down that way.
Yeah. And you have to work less, I think, because if they've dug an underhook, I can just grab this leg here and it just defeats this underhook. I think John Danaher is his coach.
Yeah, him, Gary Tonin, Renzo Gracie.
I heard an interview with Danaher and he was explaining that I allow my students to be creative after they've learned the basics. And I think he said he's a Nazi when it comes to basics, that he is just strict and rigid and nope, you have to do it this way.
Right.
And only this way.
And I think that you have to be that way because too many people now, watch the stuff on TV and they're like, oh, I just want these highlight reels. But you're never going to do these highlight reels if you can't do the basics. And you need those instructors like, Danaher or, whoever, your local instructor. You need that person to just drill, that into your mindset of like, hey, just do the basics.
Yeah,
but
you really do.
Kody, thank you for sitting down and talking with me today. Plug your social media so everybody knows where to find you and plug the gym here.
You can find me on Facebook, Kody Roach. That's simply it. I have a YouTube page for dog training, but you simply find me on Facebook. And we're holding the interview at Titan Martial Arts in Norman, and we have scrappy guys here. It's definitely a gym, a learning environment. You come in here. And it's my experience with other gyms as well that you come in and everybody's a bit of a nerd
and they all come from different walks of life and it's a nice little blend.
Yep, and you're just trying to get better and there's good partners here for sure.
Yeah, and everybody should come. Kody teaches gi and no gi. I'm not sure which days. I just show up with everything sometimes just to find out what we're doing. So if you want to let them know which days are which.
Yeah, Mondays are good days for no gi. Tuesdays and Thursdays are good days for gi. All those classes start at 6:00, and then I'm frequently here on Saturdays at 11:00 for the gi class. And in that class you'll catch Paul, and he's tough to handle on the mats.
Paul's a good guy. I've been through a few of his classes as well, and he's a good guy to learn from as well. He taught some takedowns, and then he taught some sweeps, and I was like, yep, back to those basics, those things you really need to know. And I think that, like we just said, that stuff's so important. But thank you, buddy, for sitting, down with me, and hopefully we can do this again. And I look forward to this open mat we're about to get in with all these savages showing up right now.
Let's do it, man. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Say hello to the stars above.